Hello everyone, Vic here with PhoneArena, and I have been reviewing smartphones for almost 10 years now. I have used all and everything, from iPhones to Android phones to Windows phones to even a few Palm devices and who knows what else. Back when we didn't have smartphones, I would dream of the time I would have a device that would do it all. A device that you could write notes on, that you could watch videos on, learn new stuff, a device that's a camera, a device to record your special moments on. You know, everything that a modern smartphone already is. But I have to be honest with you, as awesome as having all of this is, in the past couple of years I have found my relationship with my smartphone to be as much beneficial as it was detrimental. I have developed a habit to constantly check my phone for notifications, spend exorbitant amounts of time on Twitter and Facebook. I find it hard to fall asleep without watching a couple of YouTube videos. My bedtime hours have slipped, destroying my daily schedule, and I have been late to work more often than I could ever imagine in the past. It was time to admit it. My smartphone was getting too overwhelming for me. And at first, I did try a few new things to limit my use. Delete social media apps like Facebook, where you seem to go into a deep rabbit hole of mindless scrolling. But eventually I had to go back to check an event or something else, and after just a few days, I was back on social media and using it even more. Technology had become like a drug habit. Maybe without the graphic health consequences of drug use, but it has definitely gotten in what I would imagine to be a healthy way of life. So after dealing with yet another night of poor sleep, it was time to do something about it and take back control of my life. I looked around for a device that would replace my iPhone XS Max, a device that I could still use for calls and texts, but not much else. A device that would not do too much. And the reality is that in 2020 there are very few such devices. So I looked around and there were a few flip phones I could buy, but instead of buying a new phone, I just borrowed a Moto Razr. It was collecting dust in the office, and yes, I'm talking about the old Moto Razr, the one that you can violently slap shut to end a call without worrying about a delicate hinge and the super complex folding OLED display and whatnot. I ceremonially moved my SIM card from my iPhone and I was off to the races and back to the past. I set a no smartphone rule for my bedroom and decided I would check social media only on my laptop, but did not have access to it at any given time like I would with my phone, and definitely none after 10 p.m. And lo and behold, it worked. The digital detox felt good. My sleep schedule normalized in just a few days, and I felt more rejuvenated and healthier in the morning. Rather than mindlessly scrolling through social media, I picked up an old hobby, food and nutrition research, and I got to read some fascinating new articles and improve my own eating habits. I went back to working out more and caring more about my body rather than about my phone. But it wasn't always a smooth ride. A few things I did miss. Surprisingly, it was little conveniences like Apple Pay, for example, that I found missing. Dealing with cash money and cards seemed so tedious and old school. I also missed not having my calendar reminders for important work meetings. Those reminders were really useful. I also have a few relatives who live in a different country and I could no longer call them via an app at any time. And there were a few instances I wanted to capture a photo. You know, taking a picture of something these days is not only about capturing a beautiful scenery, it's simply about remembering stuff instead of writing it down. And I simply couldn't do this because the Razr has this funny camera from the past that takes an eternity to capture a photo, and imagine that. Back in the past, after you snapped a picture, the phone would ask you if you are sure you want to save it. This made me laugh sincerely, it seemed so outrageous, and reminded me how back in the days we did not have hundreds of gigabytes of space on our phones, but instead megabytes, and we could only save a few dozen photos, and that's it. Your storage was over. And can you imagine that the Moto Razr didn't even have a flashlight function? I found this the hard way as I was going back from a run at night, but honestly, not having those conveniences was not a deal breaker, it was just slightly annoying, and the benefits of my digital detox definitely outweighed those few downsides. At the end of the day, the more I lived with this basic phone, the more I was missing a few things, but also the more I was enjoying my freedom from notification and social media hell. This got me to appreciate smartphones more and all the convenience and speed they come with these days, but it also made me reassured in my feelings that smartphones are just too much sometimes. And yes, you can set app limits and so on, but controlling one's digital addiction is way too overwhelming for a simple human like me. I cannot do it well. And I certainly did feel like a substance abuser. I needed help, and this help came in the form of a basic phone that didn't do too much. That's why I personally would love it if I could have a dual phone life in the future. I would love it if I could have my SIM card active in both a super modern awesome smartphone that I would use at times, but also in a super basic, no notification phone, just for calls and not much else. And when that moment comes when that whole Twitter, Facebook, Instagram world just gets to you on your smartphone, you can just toss it in a drawer for a good week or so and not bother setting up app limits and spending yet more time with this gadget, but just switch back to a phone that is basic and that just lets you be. Unfortunately, I don't think smartphone companies will ever bring the dual phone project into reality. For them, it makes no sense to get you off that addictive smartphone habit that drives their profits. But for your health, this might be a better solution. It has certainly been so for me. I still keep my iPhone XS Max in a drawer and check it only occasionally during the day, but I have learned to live with the limitations of a basic phone and with the weird looks in stores or on the street. And if you also find that you cannot achieve your goals and spend too much time on your phone, my advice would be yes, try to control yourself, try the different app limits options, but if that doesn't work, don't hesitate to go back to a basic flip phone. If you're like me, you'll be better off this way, and when the time comes to go back to your smartphone, you would appreciate it even more. So that's been my experience switching to a basic phone. I'm really curious to hear whether any of you have had the same issue of technology being way too overwhelming. And how did you deal with that? Share your strategies and thoughts in the comments section, and maybe this way we can figure out a way to use our smart technologies with our ape brains and without them taking control of our lives. In either case, it was my pleasure talking to you. I am Vic, this is PhoneArena, and I will see you in the next one.